And welcome back to Lantern Corps. Today's Lantern Corps comes to us from Darian Steven, who asked the question, what is the Lantern Corps of all the Hokage that have ever been in Naruto? Now, I don't think, you obviously can't look at it as a collective group, per se, unless they all shared the same Lantern Corps. But we can obviously look at them individually. Now, it's not going to actually be all Hokage. It's just going to be the first through the fourth. A, because that would be a really long video. Not to say I wouldn't do it, it just would be a really long video. But B, and more importantly, because I've already done Tsunade through Naruto. I've done a Tsunade video, a Kakashi video, and a Naruto video. So there's no point of redoing those characters. So if you want the opinion of what I think their Lantern Corps would be, check out the playlist. Well, those were the earlier versions of this series where my face was this bit was something like this. Instead of, down here we can actually get an image and barely see my ugly mug. So yeah, we're just honestly going to go bit by bit. We're going to go through the numbering. And we'll start with the big OG himself, the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. The only known true... Okay, Yamato can use wood release, but it was through an experiment. The only known user of wood release who could use it naturally. So he stands out to me as someone who's really interesting, who can actually fit quite a few different Lantern Corps. I think I already know, though, what his Lantern Corps would be, but let's actually go through each and every one of these. So, first and foremost, you need to have great willpower and overcome great fear to be a Green Lantern. I just adjusting that real quick. Right in the middle, there we go. You need to be a Green Lantern. Obviously, having been raised in war, constant battles against the Uchiha, having to fight Madara multiple occasions, including the time where he thought he killed them, protect his village. He's obviously had to overcome great fear in his life. And as a Hokage, he's immensely powerful and has the will of fire, as you will. So willpower makes 100% sense. Now, I'm going to get this one out of the way for all four of them. Fear works on every Kage here. Like every Kage, because every one of them is basically a legend in their own right. Like every one of them was feared on some level by nations. Like the first particularly, but same with the second. The third was known as the Professor. Minato is the Yellow Flash. Like all four of them could, in theory, be Yellow Lanterns. So I wanted to get that out of the way right now. With Hashirama, though, you can actually go further. Love is not an impossible thing to say that it motivated him. That motivates his actions. His love for his family, his friend, the leaf, his wife. I mean, there is an argument to be made that love would work. It really is. There is also an argument to be made that compassion is a good option for him. This is a guy who literally gave out the tail beasts after he caught them to other villages to show, solidarity, compassion, and not equality. Let's say neutrality. That's not right. This is a man who desperately wanted his friend to come back to, the right side of things. Now, I will throw Hope in here, not because I don't think he belongs, but because it's another one where the majority of the Kage, I think, definitely fall into the line of Hope. With the exception of Tobirama. I don't think Tobirama, based on the personality we have seen that he had, he is, I'm sure people put their trust in him as a Hokage, but in terms of someone who is literally instills hope, who inspires hope, or who carries hope, no. He was a much more nihilistic by comparison between the other three. Between all four of them, he was the most nihilistic. I actually don't think hope works well for Tobirama. The other three, though, yeah, including Hashirama, I think hope is a very good option. But this is the last one I'm going to talk about for Hashirama, and this is the one that I think actually is the most likely candidate for him. And that is the White Lantern Corps of Life. I actually think he's a prime candidate for it, because not only is he someone who valued life, who was willing to give his own life to protect someone else's. Madara, he was willing to sacrifice himself for his friend and, for peace. But this is a guy who literally can spawn creation, literally create life out of himself with his wood release. This is a guy who could literally grow a forest in an instant if he truly wanted to. Not to mention that he ended up having a family. We know he had at least one child because we know that He had a granddaughter in Tsunade. So, yeah, and it's interesting, how long-lived the Senju and those Maki can live, or how long they can live, how long-lived they are, is what I meant to say. Given the fact that the Hokage, first Hokage was still around when Tsunade was a little kid. Now, Tsunade is obviously in her 50s, so that's still quite a lifespan, though. Wow, my voice just sounds out there. Quite a lifespan, though. All things considered, I think Life works as the perfect candidate, Lantern Corps candidate for Hashirama. Now, if I were to say do a secondary option, I would still probably go with the shocker, boring answer, the Green Lantern Corps. Not just because of plants or anything, but because he is where the Will of Fire concept comes from. So it's actually not Saratobi who invented it. It is, I believe, the first who invented it. So that would be Hashirama's Lantern Corps. Moving on to Tobirama, the guy, the big man in blue, master of the water release, could literally summon lakes of water out of thin air. Was a capable Steel Master and space-time jutsu user. He created the Edo Tensei of all things. This is a very powerful man. Now, obviously, like as I said, I think that honestly, Will probably works for all of them as well. And Fear, as I pointed out, was another obvious option. But beyond that, though, this one is where we get a little tricky, because I do not believe, unlike some of the other ones, he's a Hope Lantern. He's not a Hope Lantern. He's just too nihilistic for it. Nor is he a Lantern of Compassion, because while it's not his dominant trait, he's not devoid of it. He's just very calculating and cautious. He's not a Sapphire, because I don't think he's motivated by love or anything like that, and I don't even think he's a White Lantern. So really, in his case, I have considered range. But it's not really that he's an angry individual. He doesn't like the Uchiha necessarily that much, but he's not an angry individual. He's more just a guy who's seen a lot and has, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me kind of guy. Like, I'm not going to be fooled. I'm not going to be tricked for seeing good in you or anything like that. So really, I think it would probably come down to Fear. Because I think he would value instilling fear in people, not necessarily like the citizens, but like, people that he feels he needs to keep in place, over just being kind. So, yeah, my money would actually be for Fear for Tobirama. Then we have Saratobi. Now, I can't remember. Maybe I did the third Hokage, but I can't remember off the top of my head if I did the third Hokage or not. Third Hokage, obviously, while Hashirama was kind of the inventor of the Will of Fire, the one we hear about it the most from is the third Hokage. Now, obviously, as I said, green is an option. In his prime, hell, even as an old man, yellow is definitely an option. Unlike his predecessor, I do think Hope is... people were putting their faith in Lord Hokage when, Orochimaru was attacking. There is, however, he's a guy who definitely has compassion, but I think other things overtake that. I don't think he really has enough... he has really nurtured enough life in his life to really be a White Lantern. But there is one other Lantern Corps we can address. Now, I don't know if I would actually say this is his Lantern Corps, but the Lanterns of Shame, the Ultraviolets. Now, again, I don't believe it's ever been truly confirmed that they're powered by shame, the emotion of shame, but it is widely believed that is the case. So we'll treat it as shame. And I like that what I did here, because this picture, there's no Shame Lanterns logo that looks like this. That looks like that looks like anything like one of these. But I did find this, and I like how it just went smack dab over there. So I like how that worked out. Saratobi definitely carried a lot of shame with him. He had a lot of regrets going into his second term as Hokage. He had a good run, absolutely. And then, he get handed over to Minato, and, he did, okay, let's break it down. He lost his wife, couldn't save his wife. He lost Minato and Kushina, and, he had to try to take care of their kid. Didn't work out. The news that Naruto had the Nine Tails got out. He couldn't stop the Uchiha massacre. He couldn't stop Orochimaru. Sarutobi had a lot of shame in his life. There was a lot he was ashamed of and regretted. I mean, the question isn't whether or not he could be an Ultraviolet Lantern by this measure. The question is, do any of the other Lantern Corps oversee this or supersede this? Do they overpower his shame? Ooh, that's a good question. I will say this. I think shame overpowers Yellow because it's clear as he got older. I mean, look what happened with the whole Hinata Cloud incident. We've been talking about this in the Minato video, but A had a lot of respect for Minato. So there's an argument people make that, and he met Minato firsthand, and Minato actually could have killed him, and he didn't. So he had a lot of respect for Minato in theory. So theoretically, the Cloud kidnapping of Hinata maybe shouldn't have happened. But while he probably had respect for Sarutobi, he probably, A, never met Sarutobi, and B, Sarutobi had gotten on in years. So while he was still very powerful, he had lost a lot of that edge. So I think shame would overpower the Yellow Lantern of fear. Would it overpower hope? You know what? I think it would. Because not only do you have to instill hope, which Sarutobi did, but you also have to hold on to hope. And at that point in his life, near the end of his life, he was a broken down guy. Like he had a lot of regrets in life, all that. I think it would overpower it would overpower hope that he instills in others and that he carries himself, because his own personal faith and hope was, damaged. So it just comes down to, would the Lantern Corp of shame overcome the will of the Green Lantern ring? That one I don't know if I can agree with. Because remember, overcoming great fear, willpower, that is the definition of a Green Lantern. And if you want to see someone fighting against all odds, or using having nothing but what skill, power they have left, and grit and pure will, that fight against Orochimaru, where not only did he fight Orochimaru, but his former two senseis, and then literally get stabbed through the chest, and still managed to pull the arm soul out of Orochimaru. I put shame on here because I'm like, that might be a really good candidate, but I think will just narrowly edges out shame in this category for Sarutobi. Now, I think shame, though, if will were to leave him, or he were to lose his willpower, or whatever, shame would be the definite one after that. I definitely think that. And remember, shame lanterns are very unique because it's not one where you have necessarily a shame lantern ring. The ring itself is kind of it's weird. I'm thinking of something else, but yeah, shame is just a weird lantern corp, Ultraviolets. So that would be Sarutobi. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage's Lantern Corp, in my opinion. So that now leaves us with Minato, the Yellow Flash, and Minato Namikaze, the father of our main protagonist, Naruto Uzumaki. This is, again, green for green will, yellow fear, and blue hope right from the gate, right out of the gate. But are any of the other ones I spoke of options? Now, you'll notice I haven't brought up the Black Lantern Corps, and there's a pretty good reason for that. Obviously, when someone's asking about this, they're not asking about, what they're for a dead character. They wouldn't be. They know it would be a Black Lantern ring because they're dead. Obviously, you talk about when they're alive. I also threw out Avarice because none of them, despite some of their attitudes, like Tobirama's, were like truly greedy or anything like that. They genuinely wanted to help. So there's that. I don't know if I would do Sapphire. He loves Naruto. He loves Kushina. But I don't know, and he loves the village. But I don't know if that's necessarily the purest motivator for a Lantern Corps in this case. Certainly was compassionate from what the little we saw. But again, can't really say that. Shame, rage, none of those really work. And life. I mean, yeah, he fathered a kid, but That's not really much in terms of qualifying for Life Lantern. Honestly, Kushina's a better qualifier for that. So really, your options are Hope, Fear, and Will. So which one do I choose out of those three for Minato? This is different because unlike, let's say, Saratobi, who definitely lost some of his edge in terms of his rep, Minato didn't lose any of that because he died at his peak. Probably not even his peak. So, yeah. Fear is still actually a very strong candidate on the table. But Hope, too. And Will. Oh, this is where it gets tricky. I hadn't really thought about it until just this point. Okay. If I am to basically knock any one of these three off the pedestal, I think it's going to have to be Fear. And it's only because Minato's goal isn't... Just because Minato has a scary rep and, like, the stone is scared death of him, doesn't necessarily mean he would be a Yellow Lantern. I mean, it's a qualify, but doesn't mean he'd be a Yellow Lantern, because it's not how he doesn't use fear, really. Yeah, if he's squared up against someone and someone's afraid of him, sure, he might take advantage of that intimidation, but he doesn't actually utilize fear. Sinestro, at one point, confronted Batman. And he comments to Batman that you would make an excellent Yellow Lantern. Because Batman actually uses fear. And I think that's one of the biggest differences with many characters, is that when you're talking about the qualifiers for the Yellow Lantern Corps, just because they have a rep about instilling and, still instill fear in others, doesn't inherently mean that they will qualify for that. I gotta take fear off the list. Green or blue? Green or blue? Oh, God. I am going to say that given the way that he was honored, granted, they also kind of did a piss poor job honoring him because of the whole, treating his kid like crap thing. But given the way they honored him and the way that he is famed and fabled for sealing the Nine Tails, I'm going to go with Hope. I think among all of them, he might have instilled the most hope among the 4 remaining Kage. Also, I mean, obviously he had a lot of faith in Naruto that he'd be able to save the day, control the Nine Tails, all that. So I think I'm going to go with Hope. So, just to recap, with Hashirama, the first Hokage, I think he is a Life Lantern, a White Lantern of Life. With Tobirama, I think he is actually a legitimate Yellow Lantern. I think of the 3, he's the one who would actually use fear to his advantage, and like all of them, he had a rep. Sarutobi, that one is most likely Will, but with a secondary, like, razor-thin margin of shame. And then finally, Minato was a Lantern of Hope, I believe. So, those to me are the Lantern Corps of the 1 through 4th Hokages. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. As always, want us to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. We'll do a review of it at some point. Hit that bell if you want to be notified, and I'll see you for the next one.